Good evening, friends. Hope you guys had a nice week. Welcome to Vinyl Junkies, episode 48. Hello, Kim.
Jumbo Sam.
Jambo. We didn't really plan this, but I guess it's going to happen. This week is going to be dedicated to all things funk. And Kim was absolutely fine with that because she listens to a whole lot of funk herself, don't you, Kimberly?
So much funk. Everything is funky up in here.
You know, the way when we put these shows together, we really try to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what we're listening to, where it is that we're trying to work the program a little bit, is get you guys involved because we want to know with the, what have you guys been listening to throughout the week? Tell us in your comments, and as we get better, we'll kind of include you a bit more. But a lot of the show is really based upon that premise, Kim and I get together, we do plan ahead of time, but it's kind of like, hey man, how was your week? And rather than kind of get into the minutia of the day-to-day, the way it is that we talk about our week is special, and it's fucking cool. It's, it's like, how was your week meant? What records did you listen to this week? And inevitably, life stories kind of emanate from those questions about music.
Hey, by the way, I think I'm taking up all the screen again.
Are you?
Hi, y'all.
You're awesome. Dude, why do I always do this? I'm not sure that we're going up on Facebook either. Oh, yeah, I think I fixed it. Well, we put it up. I don't think we're up on Facebook, but we definitely are up on YouTube. So I guess we're going to just keep going with that. Yeah, so look, basically, like I was saying, it's just, instead of asking, how are you type of thing, it's, what'd you listen to in music, and the rest kind of just emanates from that. So it's with that I don't know, what have you been listening to, Kim? What's been up with you? Tell me.
Well, I've bought a lot of stuff this week. I know it's been, I want to talk about that Childish Gambino since you just got it, and I haven't had it for that long. But yeah, I've bought some funk and soul stuff this week for sure. I almost always do buy at least one or two funk or soul or R&B kind of albums because that's one of my biggest loves.
It's funny, Go ahead.
I do have one thing that is so totally not funk and soul and R&B, but I think we can talk about it later. But I did get the new 9 Inch Nails. I just haven't listened to it very closely yet.
Yeah, I gotta go there too eventually.
Yeah, I've got it. It's the little EP, but we can talk about it maybe next week. I just wanted to let people know that we're on this. My husband's actually playing it downstairs right now.
As well as the new Kamasi. We will get on that, but I haven't had a chance to pick that up. But I guess we can start with where the grounds came together and where it is that Kim and I basically came together to put this show. Like she was saying, she generally just winds up buying funk or soul or R&B every week, and I'm very much in the same thing. Now, I'm a long time fan of blaxploitation and just the entire culture. I've said it more than once that it's mid-'60s to mid-'70s, primarily black music. That's basically my favorite sweet spot. So there's a lot of that blaxploitation thing. With a lot of today's programming, and I mean, we saw it, for example, with Boys in the Hood and so forth, I find that although that's not the same formula, if you want to call it that, because blaxploitation was a formula, I feel that they're still basically expressing exactly the same culture. It's just an evolution, Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, the African American cinema with the blaxploitation, and then a lot of the Spike Lee kind of movies in the 80s.
Yes.
The music went from soul and funk to more hip hop and R&B kind of stuff, but with throwbacks usually.
But the thing is that for me, it always felt like an extension. Hip hop. If I start using a word like hip hop, me, Mr. White Guy, but I think of late 60s music as just being hip-hop as much as anything else because it represents a culture that, I mean, the word was kind of used only later, but it represents a culture to me that started a whole lot earlier. Anyway, the reason it is that I'm mentioning this is because a lot of my television stuff is, I watch a lot of these programs, so I watch, I'm excited about the new Luke Cage series that's going to be on TV. that looks good, you know, because the music's really good. Adrian Young really knows how to make a soundtrack. Ali Shaheed Mohammed of, you know, Tribe Called Quest really does a good job. So I've been looking forward to that. Anyway, one thing that kept coming up was Atlanta. And Childish Gambino kept coming up. So I figured, all right, I got to figure it out. Now, I don't have television, so I have to download this stuff. Looked up a torrent, and I start watching it, and realized that it falls exactly into that category of movie and culture that I enjoy the most. The black culture, the hip-hop culture. And what I found interesting about this is that I guess like a lot of the stuff that comes now, it's not just a question of shedding a light on the music of today, but paying homage, shedding a light to the stuff that came before it, and taking that stuff and just bringing it forward. Okay? And it's actually not music that got me on this track of music. It was the television program. And because for me, a lot of shows like, for example, the Luke Cage or, you know, Atlanta or any of those shows.
Blackish.
Yeah. It's all part of the same culture.
And there, I mean, I really feel like we're in a golden age of television. We're also in a golden age of podcasting, but with all the streaming and stuff like that, there's just we're not so reliant on just the three big, like, broadcast, you know, NBC, ABC, whatever. There's so many more windows open and chances being taken, and things are so interesting right now.
Oh, yeah.
That there's a lot more African American or even Asian or Hispanic people of color are getting more representation, as they should, and people of color are getting more power behind the screen, you know, the directing, the producing, and all that kind of stuff, which is, I am all for. The more diversity, the better, because we are a diverse people.
I get it, and it's funny because that's exactly why we're going to go back to Soul Train, because that's one of the very first examples, along with Berry Gordy and Motown, of that culture basically, you know, taking the reins of itself and driving it where it needs to be. But Atlanta did exactly that for me. It's like, wow, it's really interesting. And what caught me right away, I always look for the soundtrack, all right? Now, when a soundtrack starts playing Kamasi Washington, and it's like, what? All right. You know, and they're going to Gary Clark Jr., you know, there's this guitarist on stage during one of the scenes, and Gary Clark Jr. is playing, and I don't know who he is, but, you know, I got Shazam specifically for shows like that, because if I hear something I like right away, it's like, okay, what is this? I want to know.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, the soundtrack of a television show, mostly because I watch television a lot more than movies now, but the soundtrack of a television show will very often determine a lot of the stuff that I'll buy. Is that the case with you?
It definitely helps. You know, Shazam is the most magical of every application ever today. I think it's so magical. But I Shazam during TV shows all the time. I have my phone ready.
As do I.
For specifically for that, and it definitely influences my purchasing of new stuff. Well, sometimes old stuff too, but it definitely influences my purchases.
And the thing is that I like that, right? Because we're always looking for something to listen to. We're always, I mean, let's face it, I was having this conversation with my friends. Folks like us are like 10% of the record buying public, the ones that we really buy this much, because, you know, there's maybe you add another 20 or 25% that buy a lot more moderately, but the rest of the world basically doesn't give a shit. They don't, you know. So a lot of the time,
or whatever.
Exactly. And they wait for a lot of this stuff to become popular, and they let that be the filter to inform what they like, which is why there's only very few bands that wind up making a fortune, because, you know, as a business, you put all those assets on that. But what I found interesting about Atlanta was, number one, a lot of that is, it's only 2 seasons, but a lot of that is about this rapper named Paperboy and him managing his career. And his career blew up, I think, either on SoundCloud or it blew up on Mixcloud, one of those things. And a lot of the show references modern phenomena in music, modern phenomena in culture, So, you know, they talk about the Instagram popularity, or even something like podcast, right? People can say that we're trying to become popular, you know. But a lot of this stuff happening, and it made me realize exactly how out of touch I am with music. Dude, when it comes to hip-hop, a lot of this stuff is discovered online, and the way it is that these guys get record deals is depending on how many streams they get. I don't even...
The attention...
I don't know anything about that world.
I know about that world a little bit from Instagram, like getting likes, and how many followers you have and all that kind of stuff. People have made careers from how many likes they get on YouTube and followers and on Instagram, and now also on like SoundCloud or Bandcamp. You know, I think there's producers out there for commercials and for television that troll through Bandcamp looking for music to use within their shows or within commercials.
Oh yeah, listen. I mean, STB Records, you know, a stoner label, does exactly that. They check out those things and they try to get the good ones. But you know what I read today? This was, I don't know if it's disturbing, but it's really definitely a sign of the times that YouTube uses their algorithms of number of album plays to determine a lot of stuff that they will press on vinyl, right? So a lot of stuff, for example, will just start with one song, right? And that one song will blow up and get 2 million streams for whatever reason, right? This then causes, this is the chain, as far as I read it in just an article just today. The chain goes that from there, then what they do is somebody rips the entire album and plays the entire album. And they've found, doing these algorithms and checking the statistics, that people are more likely to listen longer to the albums. They're more likely to stream the entire album than just stream one song. And then
that's interesting.
And then all of a sudden, basically, that becomes very, very interesting information to mine, because if they see that they have X number of streams on an album, they'll say, hey, you know what? Maybe we're justified in pressing, 1,500 copies of this or 2,000 copies of this. And they mentioned very specifically this artist from the early 80s, a Japanese artist whose name completely escapes me. But, yeah, that's where we're at right now. Algorithms. Algorithms are deciding what we buy.
It's very interesting. Again, you and I are in the 10%, so we're looking everywhere for new music and relying on each other for new music. So, but Joe Public is hearing something on his favorite TV show, or it's on their Spotify list, I think, and YouTube probably.
Well, look, and the thing is, I appreciate all of that, and we want to do Spotify lists also, because ultimately a show like this is really just about having the conversation, so that it's not about what we talk about, it's about what springs forth from that, what albums people play, and just, for fuck's sake, man, taking a part of our life and just making it revolve around art, because art is just the best part of humanity.
Absolutely.
And I know that I need this. I absolutely need this just to keep me from going completely fucking insane, But getting back to the music, that's where it is that I wound up watching this really cool documentary called Soul Train. What the hell was it? Soul Train, Enjoying the Ride, or the hippest trip. Yeah, Soul Train, the hippest trip in America. And I don't know if you're like me, but I would say that at least half of my TV viewing is music related. I watch a lot of documentaries. Okay,
I do too.
So much so that on the Vinyl Junkies channel, if you guys are on YouTube, you might actually want to subscribe to our channel, because one of my playlists that I've taken to start doing is to start adding music documentaries to one playlist. So if you guys want movies, they're all there. They're all available on YouTube on our channel. And the reason I did that is very simple, because it's happened so many times when I want to watch a documentary and I don't really know how to filter YouTube that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it can be really hard, especially if the name is something very generic.
Yeah, it's just, I want a music documentary. It can be about almost anything, but I'm not going to go out and ask very specifically about something about Carol Kay. But if it pops up in my feed and it's like, oh, this looks like an interesting, I would watch it. So doing that, I found a bunch of metal documentaries, BBC metal documentaries, 100%. There's a 3-part series on the new wave of British heavy metal, right? So I put that in right away. But that's not what I watched because there were 3 parts. Immediately, Soul Town. And I know that you and me have this kinship because when we put, I've noticed, whenever you put your R&B or soul funk records up on Vinyl Junkies, the link that you include very often is the Soul Town link. I do the same thing. Yeah, Soul Train, sorry.
Yeah.
I do the same
thing. If I can find a Soul Train link, I am going to include it every time.
And the reason is pretty simple, right? Because a lot of that stuff, up to a certain point, a lot of that music was lip-synced. So you are getting the exact same song, but you're getting somebody performing, and you're getting these fly-ass dancers, man, laying down.
Oh, my God. Soul Train, all my friends know this, though, but I am obsessed with that. It's my favorite television show of all time. Like, I can... Oh, God.
Well,
I don't want to wax on forever, but, man, I have very deep, strong feelings about Soul Train. It's just nothing on the planet has ever been as cool as Soul Train.
The entire show will be completely revolved around that because I'm game for that. So I watched this entire thing, right? I took a couple of notes just to kind of give, and what I liked a lot about it is that already I like this kind of music and I read everything I can. So this documentary just took it from the Soul Train angle, and just everything that I learned from this dovetailed already completely into stuff that I already have. It just kind of like made the fabric a lot more as to what it is that I enjoy about this culture and this knowledge and this music, right? So Don Cornelius, the guy who started it, was basically a Chicago guy. This was started off as a Chicago show. Okay, he was a Chicago guy that used to work a lot with the political organizations. So Martin Luther King would often send Reverend Jesse Jackson. He wasn't called Reverend back there. That was the Fro days, you know, to do television programming around Chicago communities and all. And he was around the guy, the voice there. What the hell's his name? I keep forgetting his name, and I just said it too.
Who? Don Cornelius?
Yeah, Don Cornelius, right? Decided that he's going to do this show, but it was local. Okay, so it was basically
like
a cable show.
Small,
right.
Cable show.
Right, but he figured he can do this, right? So the minute it is that he put it on, the minute the camera turned on, he immediately got people watching because it was the first show of its kind that was black culture. And he was the mind behind it. Now, there was no ownership at that point or anything. It was nothing but just a local Chicago show that would have local Chicago artists. But even at that point, it was still very exciting for them because the artists from back, you know, they would get, B.B. King, that it was there. And they'd get Muddy Waters because there was the Chicago blues scene.
Curtis Mayfield.
Oh, yeah. Curtis Mayfield was the first real guy that went after that because he believed so much in community that he gave of his time all the time when it was local. But just to give you an idea, if you try to go online to look for these Chicago shows, they don't exist because they didn't even bother taping them.
Right.
Right? So, again, this is just kind of like a community show that just became very hot within the community. Don Cornelius decides that he has to kind of add a little variety, so he gets a bunch of the kids to start dancing on the show. And that becomes an instant hit. Instant hit. Okay. Now, it's a big fish in a small pond. You got to make moves. What happened during the early 70s? Motown was the biggest game in town, right? Obviously, Berry Gordy was the king of every freaking black entrepreneur. He really, really, really set the stage for a lot of that. Now,
and Berry Gordy was the head of Motown, for those of you who don't know.
Right. And Motown started in Detroit. It was a Detroit thing, but it eventually got to the point where it got big. So Berry Gordy moved the pit and everything. He moved Motown to L.A., so that they could do business, and that, it became another thing altogether. So what Don Cornelius did with his show, number one, they gave him the show, and they thought so little of it that when he was signing with the papers, they gave him ownership of the show, and he didn't even ask for it. And if you listen to the documentary, he even says, hey, you know what? I never expected them to give me ownership. I just wanted to work on it. But when they said that I could have it, it's like, hey, man, I'm not fighting it. So that's how we became owner of this thing, because they put no value in it at all. Right. So he hitches his train and moves out to LA, but knows nobody, and tries to make a show. And this is the part I think that got me the most, and the thing that makes me love this so much, Kim. The way it is that he got us started, he knew nobody. He just started calling his contacts. Okay, and at one point the OJs are playing LA, and they're there, and that's, you know, one of the guys that used to get on the old Chicago show. So immediately, no cell phones, of course, goes straight to the hotel, waits for them to come. Hey, man, can you appear on my show? And starts networking. Literally, the guy would go to the hotels of these artists and solicit them right there to appear on the show. And I have so much respect for that, you know.
I like the part that he needed new dancers, and he met that woman who was heavily involved in community centers in LA with African American youth, and she introduced him to all these dancers. And so they did an audition in one day, and that one day he got all the dancers that he needed.
Interesting.
And they were all connected through the community centers. And she was saying that she would do anything that would show the African American kids in a positive, uplifting light, and these kids were exactly that.
Oh yeah, no,
they were so cool. Just
those kids came straight from community centers.
I just think it's I just love that. I love that.
Like Don Cornelius, when you think about the way the show goes, and you'll see, like as we talk about it, it's almost like he became a success. There's some parts of it almost in spite of himself. Okay, because the entire idea of putting the kids on the show, and they became the stars very quickly. Okay, but the entire idea of putting the kids on the show was culture. It was just the local scene, right? Then when it came to him having to do it in LA, he didn't know how to do it at all. So you referenced this woman who worked at a community center, right? Who was around a lot of young kids, and Don Cornelius didn't like the way they danced at all. He didn't get it. He wasn't part of that culture. It almost seemed like, really? This is the way you're going to dance? You know? Ultimately, I mean, we know what happened, right? The dancing became what Soul Train became known for.
Yeah. So cool.
So
I love that show.
So yeah, you know, all these dancers, people started watching for the dancers, and they, within the first year, immediately got this big audience. And Don Cornelius basically started making it so that he got contacts with the Motown people, and the Motown exploded in terms of a business at this point with their move to LA. So they started realizing, you know, people like Smokey Robinson started realizing, hey man, this guy is doing an all-black produced show, and he's got the audience. It's now going nationwide. It's not a local thing anymore. I think we should be using this as a platform to talk about our artists. And before you know it, every Motown artist started basically stumping their music, or started introducing their music or their single for the first time by appearing on Soul Train.
Yeah, I mean, he got, you know, Aretha and Stevie Wonder, two of the biggest artists in the world at that point, wanting to be on Soul Train. You know, you're doing something right when you've got the biggest names of them all
within 2 years
wanting to perform. Yeah, within 2 years.
That, you know,
it's so impressive.
That's really interesting, right? Because he went from knocking on doors and asking for favors to having these artists call him. And Aretha, you know what? Aretha's a diva, and you know she earned that right. Let's not take it away from her, but she's a diva. And you see that she's contributing to this documentary on Soul Train, and doing so very willingly. And what it is that she describes is like, well, what wound up happening is this phenomenon, as it went on, they realized that a lot of records were being sold on the back of this show, because this show, unlike the internet, was the one place where they knew all of Black America would be. Saturdays, 1 o'clock, boom, in front of the television. It became, so everybody started fashioning themselves after the fashions. Everybody started, and again, this wasn't television that would repeat every week, right? You'd see it and you'd watch it once. They'd see the dances, and you see people like Questlove on this documentary saying, we're there trying to memorize what these guys are doing because we want to try those exact dances the night after. So it just basically completely took over culture, because it was the one time, and it seemed like he just didn't really understand the zeitgeist, but it happened that way, where he got all America to point at one place, and that one place was Soul Town.
Soul Train.
Soul Train. Yeah, I say Soul Town all the time because, keep correcting me, because I have Sirius Satellite Radio and I listen to the radio station there. You know.
Oh, I don't have that.
So,
you know, it's interesting. Like Soul Train, when we were in the States from 75 to 77, I watched it. I was like 5 to 7. I watched it religiously, and then they showed it in Kenya in the late. Like I saw it for a few years there too. And I would be just like how Questlove would be. I would be like watching, trying to figure out the dances, and then trying to figure out how to do the moves and stuff. Yeah.
I have my cool Saturday morning memories of that as well. I'm going to keep him because that's a little later on in the history. What he's always trying to do, just to kind of go on, right? So now it's starting to explode. 2 years, it's really starting to explode. He's trying to do things in order to innovate because something's happening at this point. There's another music show that started way before Soul Train. It's called Dick Clark's American Bandstand. Now, at one point, it starts outdrawing. It starts getting more viewers than American Bandstand. Now, fucking white men are fucking evil and they suck, and they can't let anybody have anything for themselves. So you see, fucking Dick Clark decides, all right, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna appropriate this exact show. So what he did was he did this show called, what the hell was the name of that thing?
It might have been Soul Town. It was Soul something.
It was Soul something, yeah.
It was a direct ripoff of Soul Train.
Yes, Soul Unlimited.
Yeah, that was
it. It was called Soul Unlimited, and it was a direct ripoff. Direct ripoff. They were straight up going for that. The culture, the community went against it and said, what? All right, now, back from the Chicago days, he has Jesse Jackson on his side. So Jesse Jackson basically outwardly says, hey, you know what? This is a fucking ploy to not let black guys have what they want. You're trying to, this is something we're making for ourselves and you're still trying to cut into it. And they created enough of a backlash, and Soul Train was important enough and sold enough records that Dick Clark's Soul Unlimited had to be canceled. They basically relented. And for me, it's like, fucking yeah, right?
Absolutely.
So, that's the power of it, you know, so much so that they would feature politicians that would go there because, again, what they understood was it was a music show, but it became about a lot more than that. It almost became like the black CNN. It became like the black news. They knew that the audience would be there for an hour and they'd have their voice. So politicians would sometimes go there to stump or tell their stories. And I found that interesting. I didn't know that before. You know?
Yeah, I remember seeing some of that. Oh, and the scramble, they would have kids unscramble letters in 60 seconds, and every answer about famous people, and it was always African American. So it was Harriet Tubman or Jesse Jackson or whatever like that. So it was just like it was a game, but it was educational to African Americans and all the white people that were watching too about these important African American leaders throughout history in the United States.
So. They did cop to the fact that was fixed because they would never because they were so about making sure that they had a positive image. You know, the image presented on television was fucking Vietnam War, unrest, civil rights, all the garbage. So they had control of their image. So they even admitted straight up that it's just they wouldn't show a black guy not get the answer. The entire idea was just basically to use it as an educational platform to teach people about their history. Okay.
Right.
So in trying to innovate the show, he saw the dancers were really popular. He decides, all right, well, we're going to put a spotlight on these dancers. Before you know it, these dancers start making names for themselves, and he decides that instead of just doing things willy-nilly, what they're going to do is they're going to create the fucking line dance. The soul line dance, the soul... What's the exact term that they use? You know what I'm talking about, right? Basically, the Soul Train line.
The Soul Train line.
The Soul Train line. And changed dancing forever. Because it's from there that we got moves like the pop and lock, and we got the robot, and we got the slide that eventually became the moonwalk. And if you watch the doc, you'll see that he even says, it's like, these artists, Michael Jackson straight up asked Soul Train dancers to teach him how to do the slide. And
to
then
do the moonwalk, yeah.
And then he made it on the American Music Awards, I believe, right? He does the moonwalk and the world explodes, And the robot, supposedly, they show archive footage of him, of the Jackson 5 dancing to Dancing Machine.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that. You see Michael Jackson doing the robot, and that's very much something that was taught to him by the dancers of Soul Train via the idea of just basically locking.
Yeah.
So
cool.
So cool, right? So you can see why with all of these topics, it's basically I'm watching utterly fascinated. Utterly fascinated. So you want to interject?
I was just going to say that I tell people this all the time, that a really good rule of thumb, if you're interested in soul, R&B, or funk of that era, that if Don Cornelius invited you to play on Soul Train, then go and buy that artist album. It will never fail you. It never failed me once.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good way to get a good, strong playlist if you're not really sure where to start. Start watching Soul Train clips and see who he has perform, and then go buy that artist album.
And the thing is eventually, look, he understood his brand and he went to try to innovate it, okay? And sometimes against his will and sometimes not. So there were a lot of things he had to change with the times. The show appeared on TV for 35 years, right? So he had to change with the times. The Soul Train line was one of them. Putting a feature on the artist. One thing that he had to do also, because there was stiff competition between American Bandstand and Soul Train, they were always trying to outdo each other. One of the things that you'll see eventually happen is that they move from lip syncing to actually artists appearing live for the first time, and that wasn't done before.
Yeah, and he wouldn't do it too often because of the price, the expense of actually having the musicians, like having Barry White in his 40-piece orchestra. But the big ones, like the Al Greens and the James Browns, he would actually let them play. They're not just unplugged instruments or just lip syncing.
But the thing is that's exactly it. He came into a conundrum because it's expensive to put on the live music. And a guy like Barry White, I mean, this was a major mover, right? And he'd insist on appearing with 40 fucking people in his orchestra, so you got to make this big stage for him. You got to do and it's like, what are you going to do? You're going to say no to Barry White? It's like, are you crazy? Everyone's going to watch this. So you're basically stuck having to spend a fortune on these artists. And yeah, you're right. They were few and far in between exactly for that. But supposedly that was a huge part of the history because it was the first time it was being done. When you think about the variety shows like the Midnight Special, American Bandstand, even Sonny and Cher, Johnny Cash Show, and all of that stuff, they were all lip synced.
Yeah, it was pretty rare for it to be live. Too much could go wrong.
Too much could go wrong, and it was far too expensive. So, yeah, that was one innovation that I thought of that I found interesting that I didn't know about. The other one was, are you a fan of Shalimar?
I do like Shalimar.
It's not a trick question.
But I mean, they're dancers from Soul Train.
They are.
So I don't know. I always kind of like Jody Watley in general. She's the female of Shalimar, and she was a dancer.
Yeah.
I always thought that she was kind of cool, but I mean, it's very thin R&B to me. It's very surfacey kind of R&B, but
it is.
I mean, I still like them from the time period and what they are.
So, yeah, you're right. This is basically like, when you're talking about the bands that get created in a boardroom and everything, Shalimar was very much that. Shalimar were dancers on Soul Train, and this was what's his name again? Give me his fucking name that I keep forgetting.
Don Cornelius.
Don Cornelius's attempt to become a star maker. So Shalimar was put together, and they would appear very often on the show because, well, he made them.
It's his band.
It's his band. He created it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate Shalimar, but they're kind of a throwaway.
They are.
A little bit. I mean, but they have an important part in history because it was his band. It was the Soul Train band, and he was, trying to pull a Berry Gordy. But it is pretty thin.
Yeah, no, listen, I get it. Besides the one single that I can't even remember now, just to say, but yeah, I agree. But I got Shalimar's Greatest Hits. I'm good. I'm happy. It's just what it did is it gave a little bit of flavor to why I bought this record. So now I can make it sound like I'm a lot more intelligent. Oh, yeah, of course. Well, of course I knew Shalimar. You know, it's like, of course, that's why I bought it. And meanwhile, no.
They were insanely popular for a while.
They were.
You couldn't escape Shalimar, so.
They were, and my friend likes to laugh at the fact that he still likes Shalimar, and so do I gotta say.
I don't hate on them. I mean, they're just not as strong as a lot of the other bands of the era, so.
But just to kind of put it also a little bit sideways, a lot of the artists, like you said, really started understanding the power of it, and it's not even because they understood it themselves. They were established artists. The reason they got established artists is because their kids would tell them, "Mom, why aren't you on this show?" And Mom was Aretha Franklin. So they'd get Aretha Franklin on, and she's saying, "Oh, well, yeah, I'm on this show. I'm pleased to be on this show. And I want to be on this show because you guys are on TV every week. We never miss you." That's a hugely strong message, you know, and they knew that they were talking directly to their audience. James Brown, the same thing. Don Cornelius tells the story of, you know, he's super impressed with the set in LA. He's about to go on. This is around the big payback time, right? So mid-70s, 73, 74, something like this. And he notices black producers, black people running around all over the place, and they're getting ready to put on this television show. And James Brown talks to him and says, "Hey, man, you got a really good setup, man. Who's backing you?" And what he means by that is just, it can't fucking possibly be that a black man controls all of this. This is backed by somebody. There's got to be somebody behind this, usually a white guy. Doesn't want to insult James Brown. It's like, no, it's just me. So much so that he asked him 3 times. He basically didn't believe that he controlled, produced, and did everything. And Don Cornelius was one of the first guys, one of the first black people who actually started taking production credit on television programs. So you'll see a lot of those old Soul Train shows say a Don Cornelius production.
Production. Yeah, it was a big deal. It is a big deal.
Well, it is a big deal, right? Because in order for them to get theirs, okay, just to give you an idea, I mean, we know the Berry Gordy story, but James Brown was a massive businessman when it came to radio also. That guy picked up so many radio stations in Georgia mostly, okay? Specifically because he wanted to own it. He wanted to be an entrepreneur and do something for his community. So for James Brown, who succeeded at owning all of these radio stations, to not believe that another black contemporary, you can only imagine how hard it must have been, man.
Yeah, so hard. So,
are
we gonna talk about records, or you got some more Soul Trains?
I actually do have one. I do have one question. Okay. The Soul Train line. Okay, the end of the documentary. They got all these great artists talking about how, you know, you can't go to a black party without, or you can't go to a black wedding without the Soul Train line breaking out. It's just young, old. Once people call out for the Soul Train line, they get in position, they get in formation, they know what's expected. Everybody does it. Does this happen at white weddings? Because I haven't seen it a freaking time. Not once. I've seen. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah? I've seen the Ducky Dance. I've seen the Macarena.
No. If you get a good enough band, I have seen. It's not every wedding. It's probably not even half of them, but there will Soul Train lines break out at white weddings pretty often, and Hispanic weddings, and always at black weddings, or not always, but a lot of them, because it's fun.
I defer to you because I don't go to weddings. I just know that the weddings that I went to, one of the reasons I don't go to weddings is I don't want to dress up for a wedding, but also it's just I'm not interested in doing the Macarena with old people. And that's my experience. I don't see the Macarena.
I'll see the Cupid Shuffle and stuff like that. But when I'm out there shooting the dancing at the reception, if it's good music, I'm dancing while I'm shooting. I can't help myself. I can't help myself.
That's why they want to hire
you.
I
do see white people Soul Train lines.
So what you did was you shattered my preconception. Well, my preconception is based on the Italian weddings that I go to. So that's my rap. That's Soul Train, man. It's taken up a big, but no, don't be sorry. It's taken up a big part of the week, man.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched that documentary a million times, and I watch Soul Train all the time. Clips. It's one of the best things ever. Kiko.
He's watch the mic though, because you're banging against it.
Okay, there we go.
So yeah, I guess we can start talking. I mean, why don't we start the Childish Gambino conversation?
Childish Gambino. I was so happy. I really wanted to get this when it was just in the box set.
Yeah.
When it first came out, but it was so expensive. I was like, I'm going to hold out and see, and I'm glad that I did. I mean, I'd love to have the box set, but I buy a lot of music, so I need to spread that out a little bit.
Was it only available as a box set to begin with? It was, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I found this. Actually, I bought it. I have my copy, but you're showing yours. But I bought it at Urban Outfitters, of all places. And
hey, man, I get vinyl wherever it is.
Wherever I can get my fix. If I know that I can just go, it's like, all right, man, $25, boom, done, get out. I got something to listen to. But I bought Childish Gambino completely blind. I didn't know it was. I didn't know it was Donald Glover. I didn't know anything about this guy, other than the video that he made, and I never watched the video. I'm going to watch it this week because I keep being told I have to, right?
Oh, the new one?
Yes.
America? Yeah,
this is America, yeah. So I didn't know anything until I started watching Atlantic maybe 10 days ago. And this led me to this Soul Train. It led me to Childish Gambino, playing it completely blind, like just never listening to it. And he, at one point, there's shots of stereos, and there's, the picture of his album and everything. All right, let me try this. Let me see what it's like. I like the music on the television series. Chances are I'll like this also. Dude, I was completely floored because after coming from Atlanta, the show, I thought I was going to listen to a hip-hop thing, right? Yeah. And I was listening to this because I figured, okay, now Donald Glover is going to inform me about how new hip-hop is discovered. And I thought that's what I was locking into, right? So it's like, all right, now I'm going to finally see how this is done, because to me it's always the old record way. And I put the needle on. I dropped the needle, and it's like, I'm hearing like Prince and Funkadelic. It's like, there ain't
Macy Gray.
There ain't anything hip-hop about this. This is a funk record.
This is a straight-up P-Funk record, I think.
Right?
Yeah, it's... we were talking about Shazam. That's how I found out about this album first. I mean, I knew about him and his other album. Was it Redbone or whatever? I knew about Donald Glover. And all
Redbone is a song off this album. You're talking about Because the Internet? That seems to be the other big one.
Yeah, like I knew about him from other stuff. But one of his songs on here was... I was somewhere and I was like, what the fuck is that? And I Shazammed it, and it was for this album before it came out. I was like, I must have. So that was a Shazam find for me.
I love the fact that I knew nothing, that I didn't know, that I thought I was going in one direction and I just got jarred in another direction that I wasn't expecting. Now, the thing is with a lot of this stuff, you start thinking about, I don't know. For me, Jamiroquai was a band I never got into because if I had to listen to Jamiroquai, why? I'll listen to my Stevie Wonder records. I don't need to. I don't listen to the Bruno Mars for the same reason. So it's a very, very kind of, you can get into that derivative thing, and that's not the feeling I'm getting off the Childish Gambino record at all. If anything, there are so many elements of the old stuff and so precise and not having to do with the popular stuff necessarily, that this guy very, very, very clearly, this is a record, this guy is steeped in old funk. He has to be. It's too authentic.
That guy is just, he's a Renaissance man. I mean, he's an actor, producer, singer, songwriter. He does everything, and he does it at a very, very high level. He's amazing. Donald Glover is just amazing.
I'm happy to have discovered that, because now I'm going to go a lot deeper. What it is that I did is asked, Vinyl Junkies Hive Mind for suggestions, so I'm going to start going on that. But it's funny, because the character that he plays in the show is he plays the cousin and therefore manager of the big rapper Paperboy, and he's kind of like a slack guy. Doesn't seem like much, and the show's really weird, man. There's this other third main character in it that's just a straight up weirdo, and although it follows a vibe that I've never seen on, it's pretty unique. What I mean is that it's on point in terms of message, right? So it'll make messages. It'll, have the episode of the, the black guy, with the white girlfriend. It'll have those types of episodes on the one hand, and on the other hand, it hits. It's so strange. It's so left of center that you can't possibly be making this show because you think it's going to be popular, because it's too weird to be popular.
But it is popular.
And somehow
because
it's
weird,
popular.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I never thought that it'd be able... Like, I don't know the name of the third character. You gotta watch it, but this is... weird, man. Weird show. But definitely it feels like the new face of hip-hop. It feels... It feels like television and stuff like Netflix and streaming services are beginning to provide a platform for this music, and I couldn't be happier for it.
Man, that album, you guys, go get it. It's so good.
Awake My Love.
Oh yeah, it's really, 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 really good.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's very much like a Prince, and I hear a Macy Gray. I hear Lenny Kravitz in there, and then a lot of old school P-Funk.
Well, yeah, P-Funk was ridiculous. How much? I mean, there's I took a bunch of notes for the Childish Gambino. Yeah, the falsetto that he uses, it's like Prince. There's this organ synth that he uses that reminds me of some of the stuff that Sly Stone was noodling around with right before there's a riot going on. Okay, because Sly Stone basically was a noted drug-addicted person who, at one point lived in a van, until recently was homeless. He lived in a van. And there's this record that I'm showing right now called Sly Stone's Flower. At one point, because of, he got big with the festivals and stuff, they gave him a bunch of money and they gave him a label, Stone Flower. And he basically wasted all his money just noodling around and doing cocaine in the studio. And a lot of this stuff that's on this record is very funky, but it's just that you can't make a record of it. You can't sell it, right? But it's just these funk noodlings, and it reminds me a lot of that Childish Gambino stuff. Just to give you an idea, this here is 69-70, so it's right before there's a riot going on. It's right before it's like, this is the height of Black Panther here. And for him to be referencing it that way is like, okay, yeah, but now you're referencing Sly and the Family Stone, but you're not referencing them in the obvious way that everybody else does. You're referencing it in a lot more of a subtle way, just the way it is he plays the organ. It was weird, but I guess it gives the record a certain depth that I like.
It's exceptional. It's one of those masterpieces, I think.
The song,
just like his new one. The new.
What's the
dude
new
is a genius.
What's the new one? Does he have a new album, or is this just the single?
I think it's just the single, but the new, the stuff that he just, the big video and everything. So when the album, I'm assuming an album will come from it, I'll buy that too. The guy is exceptional. Yeah,
I'm gonna forget the whole needle drop thing to hear it for the first time, because I realize that the video is very, very attached to. You have to see it and listen to it at the same time, so it's not about the needle drop. It's actually about the entire thing, and there's a cultural relevance to this video supposedly that I necessarily have to see, and I want to make sure that I see it within its context, as we're living in the world that we're living in today, and see what it is that its meaning is. It would be kind of like a pity if back in the time I waited to listen to What's Going On. Probably the best time to listen to What's Going On was right when Vietnam was happening, and that frustration was absolutely for real. That's when you would feel really, why it's such a masterpiece. But it seems like Childish Gambino is really starting to touch all that, isn't he?
Oh yeah, wait till you see that video, and you're gonna have to watch it a bunch.
Yeah,
multiple times. It's so layered. Some of it's very in your face, some of it's nuanced. There's been a bunch of really good articles written about it. But yeah, you have to watch it more than once.
Tonight, basically, it's definitely gonna happen. The song you were talking about, I'm just gonna go over a couple of notes just to give you a little bit. Redbone, dude. I heard Redbone. All I heard was Bootsy Collins. Very specifically, the same vibe as the song "I'd Rather Be With You." I'd rather be with you. Yeah, you know, just the same vibe. Again, you're going to the P-fuck thing. The P-fuck thing. The last song, or the second to last song on the album, this was really surprising. Whenever people talk about Funkadelic, inevitably they'll talk about Eddie Hazel. And whenever they talk about Eddie Hazel, they talk about the next logical progression of somebody like Jimi Hendrix, somebody who really understood the aesthetic. He died too early also. And the conversation always goes to Maggot Brain, the guitar solo on Maggot Brain.
Which is an album, for those of you that don't know.
Which is an album. But the solo to Maggot Brain is the defining moment of Eddie Hazel. When I'm listening to a record and the second to last song on this Childish Gambino features a guitar solo that reminds me of the guitar solo on Maggot Brain.
Yeah.
Whoa. Now you're starting to touch hallowed ground. And I want to make it clear, it's not because it's technically proficient. That's not what it made me think of when I thought of the Funkadelic or Eddie Hazel. It's the feel. It's
the realness of it, the depth of it, the soul of it.
Like the solo to Maggot Brain just sounds like it's being fucking played in this cloud of psychedelic drugs. Like you just feel this heavy presence to it. Even the production of the solo sounds like it's put through some kind of fucking druggy filter. And somehow, this guitarist, again, that was featured on the show, on Atlanta, and I think even on the new season of Luke Cage, Gary Clark Jr. Now, I don't listen to a lot of new blues artists. I like the old stuff, just because I like the old stuff. This Gary Clark Jr., I might have to start checking him out, because he sounds good. If he's able to sound on the shows, he didn't sound like that at all. But if he's able to get that Eddie Hazel feel, and if I'm beginning to understand where the trajectory of a career like Childish Gambino is going, it sounds like the guy is on a little bit of a Kendrick Lamar tip, where he's on his way to really making an important thing, an important oeuvre of his art.
Yeah, probably. It's interesting, like you should that Kamasi Washington. I went yesterday to specifically to pick that up, and somebody snatched the last one right in front of me.
You know that you have to mess with the that's what is it? I think there's a bonus LP. Could it be that there's 5? Is the bonus LP make it 5, or does the bonus LP make it 4?
I don't know.
I think the bonus LP might make it 4. I'm not sure, but there's one thing that 3 of the records are possible to get to right away, but there's one that's impossible to get to, and what you need to do is shenanigans, right? So there's a perforated area that you have to slit open on the Kamasi Washington cover. You have to basically open up your cover in order to get to the 4th record.
That's cool.
So what does that mean? Tell me, what do you do? Because there's 3 as record nerds, there's 3 things we could do. One is we go right away and open it. The second one is we buy 2 copies. One we open and one we keep new. And the third one's the one that makes no sense. You don't open it because you want to keep the record new. You want
whatever.
The pack.
I'm gonna rip that fucker open and play it.
Hey, fucking right, man. I can't wait to listen to that, Kim.
Oh, I'm dying to. And I made a mistake of when I walked into the record store. I saw it on their new whatever.
And you waited.
And I had to run to the restroom. I was like, I got to pee. So when I came back, it was gone. I was like, oh. But I found other stuff while I was there.
Yeah, but it's frustrating when you're going specifically for that one. like, listen, maybe I'm crazy, but the only record store that I had around was the Urban Outfitters. So I went on the off chance that I would find the new Kamasi record one day after it comes out. It might be a tall order, and I'm asking for too much. I didn't find it, but I found the Childish Gambino, so I was happy.
I mean, yeah, and I work at a record store. I can order it. I'll order it, but anyway. But I did find some a couple of other things.
Gimme.
Are we done with Childish?
We are.
Okay, I got the repress of the Meters Struttin'.
Ooh, that came out this year,
man. This one, what? To save my life, and it's on. There's been a couple people that have reissued it. There's some other label that reissued it in 2009. I think this is newer than that. It's on a label called Josie, right here. It sounds great, so I'm not complaining. I have a feeling it's kind of iffy, but I cannot find. And I looked on Discogs. I looked everywhere. I can't find the year on it, but I'm suspecting it's like pretty recent. Within the past couple of years, this came out.
It looks like a Scorpio copy.
It might be, but I have it, and I'm happy to have it. I'll look for the other. I've been looking for the Meters originals forever, but you know how rare and expensive, if you can find them, they are. So, I have it. I'm happy to finally fucking have this on vinyl. So.
Well, look, I mean, you can take it for what it is, because I have. The reason I have some Meters records is because I have the Scorpio pressings. The reason I know.
I mean, sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes you just have to get that. It's like, if you want to listen to it, it's pretty much the only way, and you replace from there, right?
Yeah, I'll replace from there. I'm just happy to have it, because it's one of those damn Meters albums are holy grail kind of territory at this point.
No, I figure it might. Oh, excuse me. Oh, Christ. Take over.
Okay.
Die here.
Please don't die. We were talking about blaxploitation.
Yeah.
I found yesterday, also when I went to go look for that Kamasi, and I would take the price tag off it, but I didn't think about it.
Whatever.
Who cares? You can get this now. You can order this now. This is the Cecil Holmes Soulful Sounds, the Black Motion Picture Experience. It's got
that's new
featured sounds from Blaxploitation. This one's not. This is an older one. This one is from 73. But I looked on Pop Market, and you can get this. I guess there's a reissue of it.
Wow.
It is. I mean, look. Come on. Who in their right mind would not buy this?
I don't know the artist. It kind of looks like something that the Young Holt Unlimited would do.
It's on Buddha, and it says that he had a lot to do with Buddha Records, and then he brought a lot of those guys together to do the soundtrack stuff for like Shaft and Superfly, Curtis Mayfield, all those kind of guys. Honeycomb, Bill Withers and stuff, Bobby Womack. So, but this is all like a lot of the main songs from different particular movies. Yeah. So Shaft, Superfly. He's got Marvin Gaye doing Trouble Man. T stands for trouble. This is everything that you want it to be. This is this is straight up as soulful blaxploitation badassery as you can get.
I guess
and you can order it now. This is something you want. This is something you need.
So I should check it out, or you should post it with a link. Actually, I will. Excuse me, on the article. I'm sorry, I'm coughing so much here.
That's okay. I gave you a link for how to order this on Pop Market.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So I can go to. Why don't you choose one, and we'll close with that. I can either talk about the Black Panther soundtrack, or I could talk about Thundercat's remix album Drank.
I want to hear about the Black Panther.
Okay. There's two versions. There's one that's kind of like just the soundtrack, which is songs from other people, right? Kind of mixtape style, Guardians of the Galaxy mixtape style. That's not the one I wanted. Then there's the one with the Kamasi stuff, and I picked it up. Was looking for it for a while. Finally found a copy.
I've been looking for it too, and I haven't been able to find it yet. So
I'm really annoyed by this cough. So I bought it, right? Nothing special in terms of the cover. You know, it's a gatefold, so that was always cool. I'll get to the music. One thing that frustrated me right away. Dude, I'm not sure that if you can see it on the camera, but it's absolutely impossible to read the liner notes. It's impossible. What is the point?
Because they're too blurry or too small?
It's so small, you absolutely can't read it. And what's frustrating about it is that this is not a Kendrick Lamar album, okay? It's a Kendrick Lamar project. So it's more like it'll feature a lot of other artists and a lot of new artists. I want to know who these artists are. I'm like interested in knowing what other people are doing. I'm interested in, like, it's reading liner notes. It's reading liner notes. So I want to know what's going on. I can't read the freaking liner notes. So what I got to do is I got to go to Discogs and check song by song in order to know what my liner notes say. That's like the big frustration when it comes to this.
Why would you even print them if you're going to do it in like 3-point font?
It's pretty. Dude, 2-point font. Like, it's silly. But it looks pretty. And if you take a look at the design and the layout, dude, there's space for them to have done this properly. This could have been perfectly legible, but it's just, I don't get it. So from that end, it made me, like, I wasn't happy with it. From the music end, I wasn't expecting a Kendrick album. Actually, I didn't know what to expect, but it's not a Kendrick album. So I'm far more likely to put on Damn, because to me, Damn is just a modern-day fucking genius album, you know. I understand why it won the Pulitzer Prize and so forth. This feels like a project where let's put together a bunch of things. This sounds like something that you would make, not the quote-unquote serious soundtracks, but a soundtrack, you know the types of soundtracks, the soundtracks that are made specifically to just envelop the movie and just sell then.
Right.
And I mean, Kendrick's in it. It's good, but I don't know. I'm not sure I'd call it a necessary part of his catalog. I enjoy it. You know, if you're somebody that needs to have it all, I kind of get it. There's one singer here, actually, that on the second song, there's one singer that I didn't know about, but I kept hearing about only last year. SZA.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Female singer, and I didn't know anything, but I kept seeing her name. So one of the songs that popped out immediately at me was the second song on side one, and lo and behold, after looking on Discogs, because I can't look at the liner notes, but I looked at Discogs and it's like, yeah, SZA. So now I think I really like her voice, and chances are I'm probably, like, if I saw a SZA album, I'd probably pick it up, because I know that I've heard the voice, I like it, and the reviews of her last album, I believe it was her debut, were quite good as well.
Yeah, I haven't run across her yet, but I see her name enough and enough respect in like reviews and stuff. Just like you said, I would buy a SZA album.
Blind buy, exactly. So that's kind of the new one that's on that that never ending to want list kind of thing. The SZA record's probably something I would pick up. And then there was another one that I thought of. There's this dude called Zachary who sings also on Damn. And look, I don't know why, but when I hear this guy, I think I'm listening to Justin Bieber. And I thought before, when I listened to him play on Kendrick's album, I thought it was Justin Bieber, because I hadn't looked at the liner notes. Holy fuck, check this out. Kendrick is collaborating with Justin Bieber. No, it's not Justin Bieber. It's this guy named, what the hell's his name? Jodeci? Zachary Jodeci. Yeah, Jodeci. Zachary. And he's got what, I don't know, which is he's got this kind of Justin Bieber voice. And there's one song that's kind of catchy. It's like a take it. It's got kind of like the songy thing that you can imagine people singing along at during a concert. That was kind of good, but yeah. That's as deep as I go on it.
I'm gonna mention this real quickly, and then we can go, because I've been trying to collect all the Ohio Players albums, and it falls right into our funk and soul discussion. If you guys don't know Ohio Players, they were a funk band. This is the first album. I've been looking for this one. It's called Ohio Players Pain. You've probably seen their albums. They're inexpensive. You can almost always find them. And they have really radical, badass covers. That's unfolded. This artist, or this model, she's on a bunch of their different covers. But this was their first album, Pain. And Ohio Players played on Soul Train.
Of course they did.
And their music was played too. But they actually got to perform. So again, my rule holds true. If you were invited to play by Don Cornelius, buy the albums of those artists.
You know who invited You know who Don Cornelius invited to Soul Train?
David Bowie.
Gino Vanelli.
Oh, I know. Oh my God. The footage of Gino Vanelli on Soul Train, I mean, those pants are so tight. They're obscene. They should be illegal. That is a lot of high-waisted, super tight, double knit.
He's got fucking
chest hair.
He's got porno cock, and he's straight up not hiding it. It's just, dude,
it's
man.
Definitely the cucumber and Spinal Tap. It
is.
It's horrifying.
Oh, so much. Oh, but
I would much rather look at this beautifulness. And look, she has armpit hair. Go, girl.
I didn't see that.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah.
She's so fierce. Her name, what is her name?
Gino Vanelli's white pants.
Running Bar Evans. This chick is a badass. Look at her. So, anyway, I'm excited to finally find the Ohio Players' first album. You can find all their stuff all the time inexpensively. Pick one up. Trust me.
We talked about a lot of funk. It's time to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.